Every marriage has that time when they experience conflicts, both big and small. But it is up to you guys in as a couple in that marriage to have various techniques to resolve your conflict, which is very important. But what I want you to understand today is the foundation for every conflict resolution for couples is patience, trust, and love. These three things will help you guys resolve your conflicts. So today I'm going to be talking about 10 different techniques for conflict resolution. Stay tuned. The first technique is sleep and let's talk tomorrow technique. Now, this is when a couple, after having a conflict, decide to sleep on it and talk about the conflict the very next day in the morning. Why is this a very good technique? Because sleep can serve as a healer. Yes, because if they decide to resolve that conflict that same day, they might still be filled with so much malice, rage, and anger. So they might not be able to resolve that conflict properly. So sometimes it's better you sleep over it, think about it, and the very next day, you guys now talk. It's a very good technique. The next technique is hug and let's talk technique. Now, this is when maybe while you're having a conversation with your spouse, you now, maybe in your words or in your action, you hurt your spouse. Now, when you notice that your spouse is hurt, you now hug your spouse, apologize, and talk about it. Now, this technique is good because it will help your spouse not to resist your warmth, and it will help your spouse understand that you're actually remorseful of what you just did. Another technique is the surprise letter technique. Now, this is when maybe the both of you had a conflict, maybe at home, for example, and the both of you left the house with so much anger after the conflict. Now, maybe you, as the woman or as the man, anybody can do it. You get to wherever it is you're going, and you now decide to send a letter to your spouse. You send a text to your spouse. Now, this technique of conflict resolution involves you sending a text, expressing your emotions, explaining yourself in a better way, then apologizing for the way you reacted. Why is this technique very, very important? Because it will help your spouse to understand what really caused the problem, understand you, where you're coming from, and then accept your apology, and also put a smile on your spouse's face. That is why this technique is very, very good. And also, a lot of people make use of this technique and it's working for them. We also have the let's talk technique. Now, this technique is all about when the both of you as a couple decide to make out time to actually talk about what really happened. And this is very important because it will help you guys to be able to trash out a lot of things. It will help you guys to focus. When you give out time for very meaningful and good conversations like this, it will help you guys to resolve a lot of things. Now, communication still remains the key in every relationship, in every marriage. So it's very important that you guys talk. It is better for you, both of you, to talk about that conflict than to be giving each other silent treatment, because silent treatment is going to making you guys give each other bad vibes in that marriage, and it can also give room for assumptions. You just assume that your spouse doesn't want to talk to you, or maybe him or her doesn't love you anymore. Don't give room for such things. Always talk about things. Another very important technique is after love making technique. Now, this is the type of technique where couples use sex to resolve their conflict. Yes, and this is very, very effective because in some marriages, some couples don't even talk, they don't even have a conversation once they get intimate, that is the end of that conflict. It happens. Intimacy can be an icebreaker. It's very strong. So yes, it can be used to resolve conflicts. It all depends on what works for you. It might work for you and not work for the next person. So all these techniques is for you to know and understand what works for you in your own marriage. Another good technique is let's chat technique. Now, this is a type of technique where couples decide to chat, resolve their conflict. Why? Because some people find it actually difficult to have a face-to-face conversation when it comes to things about conflict resolution. The thing is that this doesn't work for everybody, because chats, phone messages can be misunderstood. It won't allow you to express yourself 100%, but it works for some people. So that's why it's important that you go with what works for you. If chatting with your spouse works for you in conflict resolution, then go for it. Another interesting technique is child messenger technique. Now, this is when couples decide to use their child to resolve their conflicts. For example, one of you, maybe, okay, the man might decide to send his child, okay, go and tell your mom I'm sorry. And the child comes back with a response from the mom. Some people use this even when they're sharing the same space as a couple. Like maybe the both of them are at home and they'll send their child, like maybe from the living room to the kitchen, like, go and tell your mom I said this, go and tell your mom I love her, go and tell her I'm sorry. And the child comes back with a response, and before you know it, that conflict is resolved. Yes, it actually works for some people. That is why it's important that you go for what works for you. There's also the date technique. Now, this is when you decide to take your spouse out on a date so that you guys can resolve your conflicts over the date. And this is actually a very romantic and sweet technique, and usually loved by the ladies because, for example, if your husband, hurts you and decides to take you out on a date to apologize, it's usually something really special and sweet. So some people actually prefer going out on dates to resolve their conflicts. So last but not the least, we have the gift technique. Now, this is a very common technique between couples, and this is when one of you decide to buy the other person a gift to apologize and to resolve that conflict, to show how sorry you are and to show how much you love the spouse. So this is also a very nice and common technique. If it works for you, then go for it. And finally, for today, the last technique is walk away and calm down technique. Now, this technique involves maybe you guys just had a conflict, and instead of you to continue talking about what happened, which might lead to a heated up argument, and you might end up saying something that you regret, you just decide to keep short and calm down and walk away. This is better so that you don't end up making things worse. This is better so you don't end up saying things that are hurtful to your partner. When you're now calm, when you're no longer filled with so much rage and anger, when you're now calm, you can resolve your conflict in a better way. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is that conflict is normal in every relationship, in every marriage. So it's also important that you guys learn how to resolve your conflicts whenever you guys experience one. Find what works for you. If you really want to enjoy peace and love in that marriage, then you have to do it. So thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you so much for listening. And please, if you've not subscribed, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also like and comment on my videos. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.